Well, hello, my beautiful prairie wife. How are you today? We're not quite married yet, but we're getting there.
Getting there.
We are here to check out the Laura Ingalls Wilder Museum. There are a lot of them in locations attached to Laura's life, but we are at the one in Walnut Grove, the one that depicted in Little House on the Prairie. So we are going to check this out and see how different this is than some of the others we've seen. Daze with Jordan the Lion. It begins right now. If you ever wondered how big the covered wagons were that they would have traveled on those bumpy prairies with those big bumpy wheels, this kind of gives you an idea how much they could have packed and how much room they would have had. Of course, in the books she mentions that Jack would follow along, their dog would follow behind the wagon and take a break whenever the wagon did, so he wouldn't have even gotten to follow along, or he wouldn't have even ridden inside. Being a fan of the books and Laura herself, you know, because I read them when I was in elementary school as part of our curriculum, I love to come out and see these places and share them with people that may not know about them and want to come see them themselves, or, you know, people that unfortunately maybe can't travel any longer. Try and kind of show you what you are missing out on. But if at all possible, always come to these museums yourself. There's nothing like experiencing it firsthand. We haven't even started and you already got yourself some of the candy that Pa used to get Laura.
Yep, the girls would always ask about getting candy whenever they knew somebody went into town. So they always kind of say things about like little sticks of candy for Christmas and for treats.
Pa lived on it, remember? He fell in the hole.
He fell in the hole.
He had to eat their candy to survive.
Eat their Christmas candy and oyster crackers. But the oysters made it home.
And he said, Laura, I'm so sorry. And she said, that's all right, Pa. Did you enjoy it? He said, I sure did.
Sure did.
So we're going into this railroad house. Depot building. Here's the wedding photograph of Charles and Carolyn, if you want to see what they really look like. And of course, we mentioned when we went out to the Dugout site about Williams kind of making all this possible by doing the research and finding the places. He was the illustrator. Look at that. They have a map that Laura drew out to show where the homestead would have been. Plums, Old Road to Nelson's. You can see it says Fire Break. So that's probably how he found it. Said he followed the banks of Plum Creek. Oh yeah, Katie found a drawing of where they would have had a little walk across for the creek and everything. Look at that. And then this is depicting when Laura says they have that gigantic swarm of grasshoppers that really just killed all hopes of earning a living. She discusses their big bulging eyes. Over here they have a quilt. It doesn't exactly say whether Laura made it or not, but I want to believe that she probably did because I've seen others in other museums and they have identified here as her sewing box. So probably was one of the quilts that she made at some point, but kind of excited when I saw this because we told you, you know, that story where Pa has to eat the candy. He had basically went into town because he didn't think that the weather was going to be bad. And he wanted to, back in those days, you would go to to town to find out what the news was. So he said he wanted to go find out what the news was and get some new pipe tobacco. And while he was there, he saw the storm starting and someone told him like the coat you're wearing is not going to be good enough. So he had to pay, I think he said $15, but he said, thank God he had it because when he was working his way home, the snow came so fast and it was so dark that he said he didn't really know where he was and he couldn't see the house. He couldn't see the light that Carolyn had on. So he said he fell in a hole and just slept there for like 3 days getting covered in snow. But he survived because he was wearing a buffalo coat. And so they said that this is very similar to the coat that he would have bought from Mr. Fitch, which I think is so cool. That is so cool. His lucky coat. Then they're talking about here all the locust situation. The walls are just covered with information about their lives. Like, this is not really talked about in the books, but their time in Burr Oak, Iowa, and the Stedmans, who they became good friends with right there. This actually talks about the Nelson family, who were their neighbors here in Walnut Grove. And Laura tells a story about wheels of fire almost burning down the homestead because fires had started and they had tumbleweeds that had caught on fire and they were going to burn. They were coming closer to the house, and Ma was out there with like a wet mop and rag and stuff trying to stop them. Mr. Nelson came and helped her.
So in the book, there's a couple of really great stories involving the Nelson family. So one of them starts from the very beginning when Pa is purchasing a cow. He is asking Mr. Nelson what the cow's name is. And Mrs. Nelson kept saying, Reet, Reet. Yeah. And he couldn't understand what that meant, but what they meant, you know, wreath of roses. Yeah. Wreath. So they decided to name the pretty cow Spot instead.
Yeah,
so,
Mrs. Ma decided that was a better name.
That was a prettier name. And then later in the book, Charlotte, who is Laura's beloved little rag doll, ends up in the hands of one of the Nelson daughters. Anna Nelson. And it was
Laura's prized possession. It was her
prized possession, and the little girl just would not let go of it, and she pretty much threw a big tantrum, and Ma told Laura, you are too old to be playing with rag dolls. So the little Charlotte doll made it home with the Nelsons, only to be found frozen in a puddle later on.
By Laura.
By Laura herself.
And so the hair was ripped out, and the smile
was gone. So she took that doll, she ran back home, and she felt so bad, but she told Mama, she's like, I don't care if I stole it, I had to have her back.
Yeah, and Mama fixes Charlotte back up.
Starches her up, fixes her up, good as new.
Charles always said that the neighbors were Norwegians and good people that were very helpful and you could count on. So they definitely were that. Mr. Nelson was the one that helped him build the home here. It looks like they're identifying these as Johnny Johnson's tools. That's crazy if that's the case, because if you watch the TV show, you know that on the TV show at least, Laura's first love is Johnny Johnson. She falls in love with Johnny, and Johnny's actually in love with Mary. So, and Mary doesn't care anything for him, according to Laura. So these are Johnny Johnson's tools, the real Johnny Johnson. He was the herd boy from on the banks of Plum Creek. These were brought by the family to Walnut Grove in 1874 when they moved from Norway. Tools were once again transported by covered wagon to Day County, South Dakota in 1881. Laura writes about Pa's green book that he was reading. This is the green book. That is crazy. It says he would lay on a twisted pile of haystacks and sticks, and Carrie brought Pa his big green book. Please read about the lions, Pa, she asked him. The light is here from our campfire. Wild animals are all around us, yowling and squealing and roaring. Lions and tigers and hyenas, and I guess a hippopotamus or two. This is kind of cool. They have replicas of Laura's Christmas pennies. She talks about getting a shiny new penny in her stocking for Christmas. Thrilled and delighted. And then, if you remember, she also mentions that when they go to buy their new slates, that they're a penny short because they need a pencil to write on it. And Nellie's so awful that they don't want to buy that pencil from her dad, so they buy it from someone else with their Christmas penny because they don't want to ask Charles for another penny. Oh, they got a picture of the bell that Laura writes about. So we're going to go see that afterward. That's at the Lutheran church. Remember, he was going to buy new boots for $3, but he found out they needed $3 for the bell, so he gave them that, gave him his money instead, no new boots. Says he actually donated $26.15. In her story, Pa thinks that he's going to get all the money from the harvest, and then that's when the grasshoppers kill it all. Laura's Copeland, England Rosebud Chintz dinner plates. Rogers Brothers spoon. Very nice. And that photo shows what the town looked like before the fire in 1903 that we were talking about. All right. I'm hoping maybe they have some of the stuff from the TV show. I've never really seen any of the props from the show in any of the museums. Oh, look at that. Cast reunion. Then they've got the picture of the house painted as soon as we walked in. And this whole case is to Karen Grassel. There she is at the Dugout site that we went to while we were here when she visited. The show became such a big success that they asked her to come out here and promote it. She just couldn't believe it because she said back in those days nobody really did stuff like that. So she was shocked how many people came out. But this looks like it's like her journal with all the dates and places she was going to be. Photos of her, some of her belongings, her book. Look at this, holy cow. So this is a lot of the memorabilia of some form. I mean, right here, what is this piece of wood? Look at that. That door, sliding door there, has photos of a lot of the cast members. But down here, look at this. You have a signed director's chair. You have a reproduction with it's a lot of cast members, signatures all over it. But down here they have a reproduction of Olson's store. And then some of Doc Baker's stuff. His doctor bag, his suit jacket. Doc Baker in a lot of episodes. Oh my gosh, Katie just showed this to me. It's Michael Landon's fiddle, Pa's fiddle from the show. I got to see the actual fiddle of real Charles Ingalls in Mansfield, but they have the one that Charles would always play on the show. How cool is that? And it says it was donated it was purchased from Melissa Gilbert's personal collection. It says right there. I wish they would have had it posed upward though. The other cool thing, look, some of Mr. Edwards' wardrobe. My favorite person on the show. Old Dan Tucker. How can you not like Mr. Edwards? That is so cool. All the way down to his boots. Of course, he comes to town. Charles knows him from the pilot episode, their days out near Independence. But he finds Mr. Edwards drunk in a saloon in Mankato and brings him back to here, to Walnut Grove, and gets him a job at the mill, Hanson's Mill with him. And then look at this. Costume from Little House on the Prairie. I'm trying to see, it was Susan Duggan. And then down here they have a recreation, like a model of their house from the show. Of course, the real Charles pretty much always had a beard, and Michael Landon didn't, but other than that, I think Michael Landon was a fantastic Pa. Look at that! They recreated the mantle with Pa's initials and Ma's initials in it. How cool! Oh no, they didn't recreate. This is the one! Oh my God, that's the actual mantle from the show, and it's a replica of the rifle. Oh my gosh, Katie, get up here. I need a photo you in here. Get up here, wow. Mrs. Ingalls. How cool. Wow. That is neat, man.
Donated by the prop master for the series, it says.
Wow, that is so cool. Of course, they're showing episodes, showing all the board games and everything that you could buy affiliated with the show. And there's Albert with the little shepherdess behind him. This was Ma's prized possession, the shepherdess. Wow, oh man, I don't know if you're supposed to touch this stuff or not. Don't tell anybody I just barely nicked it. I just had to, just to say I did. That is so cool. Oh man, look at that. Wow. Nellie's hair. Allison Ingram, who played Nellie Olson's hair. This is Little House on the Prairie clock. It's a Christmas gift to the cast and crew. And then these were props from the show that Ma would have used. The green kettle and thing. all these, the traps.
Now you please do. You've been working hard. Half days for me. I would like that. I like it too. Good.
All props from the show. And scripts from Little House and New Beginning. More props. And they have a hat that was signed by Michael Landon. Here's a model of the Dugout house that we went to. And then different models of the home that they would end up living in and use for the show. Then up here they have little models that they made for the show. See what you remember. Here's Olsen's. So here's one of Baby Grace's dresses. Charlotte Stewart, who played Mrs. Beadle, hand makes bags and sells them now. And I actually got one at the festival. That's one of hers. They're all different. Oh, and Katie just noticed that it's signed. There's like a lot of writing on it, like in pencil, signed by Mrs. Olsen. And this whole top row are all cast members that have signed photos for the museum. They did an absolute fantastic job of decorating the walls here too. Fireplace or the fiddle or Mr. Edwards' costume, I just don't know. Probably this. Tell you right off the bat, one of the things I love about this already is none of the museums really have anything from the, as far as props or wardrobe or anything. They have the real Laura stuff, but I love seeing this stuff. It says this is called Grandma's house. I'm not exactly sure what that means, so let's check it out. Interesting. I think this, oh, well, I'm noticing over here, I mean, you have a lot of old-timey stuff, but I'm seeing over here a picture of Laura meeting with fans. So this town holds a Wilder pageant for like a Laura Ingalls Wilder pageant every year. Draws people to the town. So these are some of the mementos from there. You can dress up in some of the clothing if you want to take a photo, but they also have some of the old like jackets and things like that and people that participated in them. This is kind of cool. I'm trying to fight the light and everything, but that's the cover that Garth Williams did of On the Banks of Plum Creek that we all know, and above it is the drawing version, the original version that he did before it was colored. And they have a lot. If you notice all of these, the top is the original size and original drawing that he submitted for the books. There's Garth Williams. Deserves a huge thank you. So over here they have a Missouri ruralist, and that's who Laura started writing for first. And then they have a writing desk over here, and Katie noticed that they have a ton of publications that Rose wrote for. Rose was one of the biggest writers of her day. Saturday Evening Post, Harper's Magazine. She was a war correspondent for the Vietnam War. All these books were written by her. Over here is the old jail, Walnut Grove jail cells. If you want to take photos, I actually have a photo of where they would have been located right there. And then Katie, why don't you get in there and I'll close those doors and we'll see how secure they really are. E.T. Barnum Ironworks, not to be confused with P.T. Barnum. Not the most comfortable place in the world, but this is what I'm super excited about. They recreated the dugout. How cool! You actually get to see what the Ingalls dugout they believe would have kind of been like. And this is a dugout home. Of course, you know, like we said in the other video, one of the stories we heard was that they found it by Charles putting his foot through the roof. That was one of the stories, but Laura says that she finds it while out looking around, and that one of their cows accidentally puts his foot through it. See what it would have been like. Ugh. Guess this would have heated the whole place, but I mean, at the time that they were living here, I mean, this place ain't that big, is it, Katie?
No, it's not.
Like a little shack.
It's the size of a shed.
At the time that they moved in here, it would have been Charles, Ma, Mary, Laura, and Carrie already.
And it said Mary was 8 and
Laura was 7.
Yeah.
So this is basically how big it really would have been. But you know what I just noticed? You know, in that case in the center, there's someone we talked about already. If you look in here on display, right there is Charlotte. So they have a couple of belongings in here. Showed they would have stored some of their food in here. Man, this was bare necessities. Here we have the Little Red Schoolhouse. I wish they would have used Charles Bell for that. Kept it on the property, but of course they talk about walking, and they have to walk 2.5 miles. So of course they end up not going to school when the weather is super cold and everything. Just a small little schoolhouse. Also in the books, her teacher, Miss Beadle, her husband also runs a store. And so that's who they end up getting their writing utensil from, Miss Beadle's husband. But they have a great picture over here on the wall of Melissa Gilbert portraying Laura when she was a teacher. Here's the teacher's desk and a couple of old belongings that would have been in the classroom back then. Some of the old desks. Now we're going in the settler's home. So it says this is the same size as the description Laura gives of the house in Wonderful House, Pa built for the family by Plum Creek. Notice the fresh pine smell from the sawed lumber. I do notice it. It smells very good. Some of the tools. And then over here, rope and tunnel bed. If you notice, there's a little bed coming out from beneath the bed. Rope beds date back to the 13th century. I don't know about a rope bed, I'm sorry. That doesn't seem like the most comfortable thing in the world to me. But that's why we check this kind of stuff out, to see how good we have it now. This museum's amazing. I love it. All right, now we're going in something called Heritage Lane. I don't know if I've ever heard more police and fire emergency sirens go off in one town as I have in Walnut Grove. Katie, was that number 7 since we've been here for 2 hours? I wonder if this is supposed to be kind of like a recreation of one of the stores. Obviously, you know it is, so I think maybe you get the feel that you're in the Olsen store. But over here they have the Walnut Grove Tribune. So you can see they're showing this because Carrie and Laura and Rose were all writers. Carrie first, she wrote for the DeSmet paper, and then Rose, of course, was a writer. And then when they came back, you know, the newspaper here in town covered any event when Laura came back, or the cast and stuff like that. So showing the history of it. That's the switchboard here in town for Walnut Grove when they got phones. And here's the original town phone booth. How crazy is that? First one in town. This is interesting because it's probably Very similar to the way Pa would have had to have built things. Same type of tools, same kind of primitive methods, and always had to make deals with people because they came here, they had nothing. So you'd have to make deals with people. Hey, can I get this amount of lumber to build a home? And in return, I'll give you the proceeds from an acre of my first crop or whatever. And they're showing this because this is an actual part of a log cabin from about 10 miles from here that people lived in. They just wanted to kind of show how it really would have been built. This is talking about Walnut Grove also being a railroad town. So they call it Laura's first railroad town. And they have the route that the rails would have went. And here we have a covered wagon. They're showing this mainly just to show you how they would have packed it, all the things that they would have had to have taken, and how they would have managed and what kind of space they would have had to manage with. It says almost always the parents would ride up front and the kids would ride inside the bed of the wagon. And then, of course, as I mentioned, Laura describes that she had a beloved bulldog named Jack who came along with them on these trips. So Jack, she said, would run behind him. And in the pilot episode, of course, Jack gets lost and washes downstream. And Laura's so upset, and Pa goes looking for Jack and comes back and says he couldn't find him or anything. Then the next day, when Laura's so upset, she asks Pa, why did you act like you didn't care that Jack was gone? He said, well, I guess I just didn't want to show how hurt I was. And then all of a sudden, who comes barking up the path but Jack? He found his way back to the family. So we've made it over to the English Lutheran Church, and in Laura's books, she talks about Pa going to town. He was going to buy some new boots for $3, and when he comes back, Carolyn asks him why he didn't buy the boots or why he's still wearing his old ones. And he says, well, I got there and Reverend needed the money for the bell. He needed exactly $3, and that's what I had, so I gave him the money for the bell. So Charles, goes without shoes and everything. But when that church, when they tore it down, they actually took the bell and brought it over here. So they have a sign right over here that says Pa's Bell, and right up inside there is the bell that he financed. So cool that lives on. A lot of people may not have even known that story. Never saved the bell had it not been for Laura writing about it in her book. Well, my friends, I hope you guys all enjoyed our trip here. This was pretty cool because this is, out of all the Laura Ingalls Wilder museums there are, this is the only one that actually has anything from the TV show. So if you were a fan of the TV show and you're like, where do I go? Walnut Grove Museum. Thank you all for watching. We'll see you next time from Walnut Grove, Minnesota. Goodbye, half pint.